Hey guys, it's Yvette, and here we are with the last of the mini series by, it's by Giucy Giuce. He partners up with Alison Glass, and they are doing this entire mini series that goes for 10 weeks, and this is week 8. And the next 2 weeks, after we have finished this, we have the next 2 weeks to finish up our designs in some sort of project or projects. So start thinking about what you want to do with all of these little guys. And hopefully you've been following along, because this one here, there's a reason why it's last. It is a bit more complex. And I'm going to walk you through all of the steps as they look to me, okay? So what we're going to do is first, let's make the marks on the pattern, and you only need one sheet, okay? So we're going to make the marks on the pattern that will tell us where the seam allowance is and where the last stitches will go, okay, on the pieces. So I'm going to do pink on the inside for basically for the inside of the pattern. Now here's what we're going to do. Now I'm going to do a 4-inch, okay, which means that I am going to be following the lines that he has on the template. And so that means this bigger, darker line, okay? Thanks, JB. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't jumped on there. Okay, so I'm going to put that line here. Are you jumping off? Because you're going to shake the table. Okay. And we are going to be cutting these into different pieces as well, okay? So these 4 pieces are going to be cut apart and sewn together separately, and then we sew them back together. And we also will be including this little bitty square over here, which is the center, as you can see Giuseppe sewed here. Okay, so let me do this one as well. And this will just kind of tell us or remind us where we are sewing to. And this is all part of our block. Okay, now I'm not going to mark anything in here except this little piece and this little piece. Okay, just so that I can tell where I'm going to finish. And then I'm going to take a different color and I'm going to mark the seam allowance so that I know where it's going to go. Okay, so I'm going to mark this piece here. I'm just kind of making it a little bit darker, going over it a couple times. Okay, while I'm here, I'm just going to mark this little square down here. So if we just get used to marking everything, then we know where we are. Okay, now, well, let's do this easy one up here too. Okay. Okay, so showing by the seam allowance, you're going to be cutting this piece and then you're going to bring it down. And what I'm going to do is, you could mark a 1/4 inch from this line, right? Because that is like a pink. So I could take the pink and mark this line, right? Because that'll be like my sew space. And that would be the same as like marking this line and this line, since I marked them down here. And for these guys in the middle, this is our 1/4 inch right here. And so we won't be able to sew outside of that. If you want to do that, you'd have to just print another one of these sheets, and you'd have to keep them separate, which you could. Or cut them separate. It gets a little faint right here. Okay, now here's what I'm gonna do. I'm not making a very straight line right here, but it doesn't really have to be. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I am going to just cut right up here to like this line here. I'm gonna make that sort of like my 1/4 inch for this guy, and I'm gonna make this my 1/4 inch for that guy, right? Even though it's a little more than a 1/4 inch, that's okay. That way I'm just not cutting a whole bunch of lines. It'll be just fine leaving it that way. So now let's cut our pieces out. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut across, I'm gonna cut across this blue line, which is our seam allowance. And as long as I have it even on that line, it's gonna be even everywhere. And you can also use like any other lines that are crossing things that are already inside, just to see that it's roughly even. Okay, now we're going to cut 2 things out of this. I'm going to just set it aside for a bit. And again, on the blue line, or whatever color your line is, I'm just going to make sure it's relatively straight. I can see another line in there that I'm using. That's pretty good. Okay, now all we're going to do for this is we're just going to, and since we have all of this extra like right here on either side, you can go and trim a little bit outside from your seam allowance, which I probably will do just because why not? It does make it a little bit easier. So anytime I absolutely can do it, I might as well. Okay, and then I'm just going to cut these 2 pieces apart because these are 2 separate pieces. All right, so I got 1 piece. I'm just going to set over here, and then I will just do these. Now we have 2 pieces, and I'll cut this one. I'm just going to, like I said, since I do have the space, I'm just going to make this one a little bit bigger since I can. Okay, and then the first thing, now this one I won't be able to go out too much because I do have to make sure I keep this square with, so I'm just going to go out. What I might do is I think I'm just going to cut on that line and then it'll keep it where it needs to be. Yeah, that's good. Oh, I'm not throwing that out yet. Let me just get that one out of there so I don't forget. And I'll probably just cut it a little bit bigger. It doesn't have to be huge. It'll also just make it a little bit easier to handle, to have a little bit of a bigger piece. And as long as you can see your blue lines or whatever your color is, then that's really fine. Okay, so now that one's done. And then one more left just to cut this one out. Okay. So now you should have those two and these two and the center, right? So that's how they're going to all go together. And the first thing that we're going to do is you're going to see that the numbers that are this number 1, let's just start. Number 1 was cut off way down there and down there and down there and down there. So again, we had another one like this. Was it the pineapple? I don't remember which one it was, but there was one where what we're doing is we are starting on the lowest number that is available in our pattern. Okay, so for this one, the lowest number is 15, and 15, and 15, and 15. Okay, so when we're making these 4 pieces, number 15 is going to be our first number. For this one, in the center, it's just going to be 1 and 2, right? So I was thinking about this because, as you know, I've been putting just a background in the middle instead of a white piece. And I thought, well, do I want to keep doing that? And here's the thing. That's what I've been doing. So in order for it to be uniform, that's what I'm going to do again. So mine is going to be all background, but you will still be able to see the difference because you can see where the seam lines are that you attach. So there will still be like a slight, you know, you'll sort of be able to tell. But I'm telling you, like now that I've made all of them once, it'll make me think the next time I'm making them about how it's going to all come together in the end, instead of just thinking of it as, I don't like that white thing in the middle, right? Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. So this is going to be the first piece I'm going to do. That way I'm done with the middle and we can just move on to the colors. So I'm just going to set these aside for a bit. And let's cut some pieces for this. Let's see. Okay, so I have this piece, and my number 1 obviously is not going to move, and then I have 4 number 2s to add on. Those are pretty small, so I'm just going to cut that one. And then I think what I can do is I can just do like 1 and 2. Oops, I just took them along with me. And then cut those in half because they're quite small. Okay, so let's take these over to the sewing machine and get this one done first, and then we'll come back and get started on our bigger guys. Okay, so our number 1, I'm just going to take the fabric and put it right in the back. And then you can just pick any number 2. It really doesn't matter which one you start on. And we are going to take the piece, put it to the back of the template, and make sure it's about 1/4 inch above the line that we are going to sew, which is this line right here between the 1 and the 2. And it's right under the number 2 that we are sewing. Okay. I'm going to shorten my stitch length to 1.4. And I'm just using a neutral thread, a very light gray. You want one stitch and then one back stitch, and then sew down to the end. Back stitch and cut. Okay, that's the line I just stitched. I'm going to flip that right over. That's the number 2 that I sewed under, so I want to take that number 2 and turn it to the right. Fold back your template. Use your add an eighth ruler to bump right up on that seam and trim off the excess. And now we're just going to go and press that back and add the second number 2. Okay, so this is the number 2 on the bottom that I just attached a piece to, and I'm going to go across and do the 2 that's on the other side. So I'm going to take a piece, put it to the back of the template, and then just make sure it's a 1/4 inch above the line you're going to stitch, which is right under that number 2. And let's go. Okay, so this is the line we just stitched. I'm going to flip that right over. That's the number 2 that I sewed under, so I'm going to turn number 2 to the right, fold back my template, and use my add an eighth ruler to trim off the excess. And I'll just go and press that back and add number 2, part 3. Okay, so you have 2 number 2s left. Either one is fine. I'm going to pick up my fabric, put it to the back of the template. Make sure it's at least 1/4 inch above the line I'm going to sew the seam, which is this one right under number 2. And let's go. Really? Thank you. Okay, that's the seam I just sewed. Flip it right over. And that's the number 2 that I just attached. So I'm going to turn that to the right and fold back my template and trim off the excess. Okay, I will press that part back and then we will add the last number 2. Okay, we are putting the last number 2 on there. I'm going to take my fabric and put it to the back of the template. Make sure it's at least 1/4 inch above the line I'm going to sew, which is right here. And let's go. Okay, so here's the line I just stitched right under the number 2, which I will turn to the right, fold back my template, and trim. And I will just go press this and be right back. Okay, so there's my little boring middle piece because of the way I've been doing it. Now for this one, what we are going to be doing, as you can see, is it is sewn to the other 4 pieces. So we're going to trim this one to the 1/4 inch seam allowance, okay? So I'm just going to take, let me scooch this out of the way. Just take a regular ruler. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my 1/4 inch line on this line here and then trim, because I could have, you know, made like a really thick line, and I don't want it to be too big, so we'll have a lot of bulk back there. Okay. This is a tiny little piece. Okay, so now there he is, and I'm just going to set him to the side for later. And now we are going to start on our actual pieces. Okay, so I'm going to do one on the camera with you guys, and then I'll do the other 3 off camera just for expediency, and that way you're getting an idea from one of them how to go about it, and then we can do the other 3 on our own. So just set that over there. I'm going to take one of the ones that I'm sure you're thinking is a little more difficult because it's smaller, so we'll do that. Okay, so since we're going through number 15, that means we will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 colors. And the way that Giuseppe did it was he started with his red/pink, you know, whatever, and worked his way down to violet. So that's what I'm going to do. And we need 7 colors, and I have 10. So we did this before. Let me see. Which one did I do that on? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, but 1, 2, 3, 4. That was 5. That was 5. This one is 7, but it's different. Okay, hold on. That's not the same way. Let's look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nope, that wasn't it. Oh, maybe it was this guy. Is it this guy? No, we have all the colors there. I'm trying to see. Oh, it was this guy, wasn't it? Yes, because I started and then I went back. Okay, hold on. Let's look at that one. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But then we wouldn't have a purple. I can take one of the pinks out because then, yeah, I think that's what I'll do. Okay, so I'm going to work with this one. And then this one. I need the yellow. And then, that was just ruler, guys, sorry. And then that one. And I'm gonna have to cut more of this one, but that's the next one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and okay, I don't have a piece of that last one, so let me cut that real quick. And that one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. Okay, so I can scooch that back over here now. And now what we're going to do is number 15 is our first one. And as you can see, and you're also can see it on the pattern, it is a square in the corner, okay? So we want to make our first piece this number 15, but it's going to be the square. So you can see how it's marked. So we'll have our darker purple, because that's the one that's all the way on the outside. And then we're gonna do, so we'll do 15, and then 16, 16, 17, 18, 18, 19, 20, 20, 21, 22, 22, 23, 24, 24, and so on. Okay, yay, I can count. Okay, so that's how we're gonna do it. And of course, when we're doing a 16, 16, those two pieces are background. Okay, now the other thing to remember is when you're adding those on, you want to make sure you're cutting this big enough that your fabric will cover the seam allowance. That's very important, that you are making sure you are covering the seam allowance with your fabric. Okay, and that means down here too. So when you're putting your piece in for number 15, you want to make sure you're getting it big enough that it's going to come all the way down to at least the bottom of this number 11 to cover this seam allowance. That's very important. Okay, so let's get our pieces cut. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this one, not huge, but a little bit bigger than we think, because we want to cover that whole bottom. So it has to go from a 1/4 inch above here to a 1/4 inch below the 11. So that's pretty good size right there, and that will cover it also. So we're good with this piece. Okay, and then I'm going to have 2 pieces of the background. And like I said, it doesn't have to be huge, but it does have to cover this seam allowance. So I'm just going to make sure it's wide enough. And we are ready to sew. Okay, so here we are with our first piece of the X, or piece of the crisscross, and we're going to make sure that we place our first piece, which is number 15, very precisely, only because we want to make sure that we are getting it all within the seam allowance. And I cut a good enough size piece that we don't have to worry about it too much. So here is the top of number 15, right under number 17, and then we had to go all the way down to number 11, and we have plenty of fabric there, so we're good. Now we're going to add on the 2 number 16s. I'm going to take 1 piece of background fabric, move it to the back of the template, and I just want to make sure that it is at least a 1/4 inch above this line between 15 and 16 that we're going to sew right now. Okay, and I'm going to start on the outside edge because I think we have, or I have anyway, discovered that that's just easier for me. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that from the outside. And actually, I think I need to, yeah, so let me pull this out again so I can show you. If you look right here where we have drawn the end of the pattern, right, we want to make sure that we are only sewing within this area and then downward. So you see how there's like that little piece right there? We don't want to sew that part, because that will be in the seam allowance and it'll just get weird whenever you're doing your pressing, because you will have, that will be the area that is going to be, you know, the end of your design. So I'm going to start actually right there in the middle sewing instead of all the way to the end. Okay? Oh, here it is. I was like, where was I? Oops, too far. Okay, that's good. Okay, here's the line I just stitched right under number 16. So I'm going to turn 16 to the right, turn over or turn back the template. And then trim off the excess beyond 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so I'm gonna go and press that piece and then add on the second number 16. Okay, so now I am going to add the second number 16, and again, I'm gonna start my stitch right there at the intersection between the line under number 16 and the pink line that we drew for the end of our pattern. Just make sure it is at least 1/4 inch above the line we're going to sew. And here we go. Okay, here's the line we just stitched right under number 16. Take that number 16 and turn it to the right. Fold back your template right on the seam you just sewed, and then trim the excess. I will press that and come right back for our next color. Okay, so our next color is the blue, and actually I don't really need to cut any more right now. I will when I'm doing those, but for now I'm just going to cut a piece off of here, and we just needed to fill this number 17, so I can cut this in half and we'll be fine. Let me make sure. If I cut that in half, yeah, we should be good. Okay. And then, put that over here. Yeah, sure, why not? And we'll cut a couple of pieces of, and I don't think we actually need them to be that big, so I'm gonna cut them a little bit smaller and we'll still be fine. Okay, let's go sew. Okay, so we have finished one of the pieces. We've got all of our colors in, all of our background. And let's go ahead and trim this one just so you can see what it looks like when it's done. I'm going to put my 1/4 inch line on the last, or on the edge of the stitch line. And that way I'm trimming at 1/4 inch. And I just kind of go slow because you've got a lot of layers of fabric right there. You just don't want to, you know, make a mistake or whatever. It's a lot of work you've just done. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, this one's the easy one. I'm forgetting where I am. Okay. Now on the edge here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to now put my 1/4 inch line on the little pink that I have. Okay, so there's our first piece, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the other 3, and you can go ahead and do that as well. I'm going to probably do them all at once. In other words, you know, I'll do all of my purples and then both of the next, you know, background, and then the blue and then the background on all 3 of them as I go. I mean, obviously you can't chain piece, but it's still a whole lot easier if you got all 3 going at once instead of, you know, doing them one at a time. So I will be back as soon as I have the other 3 ready, and we will put it all together. Okay, so as you can see, I have all of my pieces all put together, and now it is time to make them into one block like this. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to attach these 2 sides to the middle. And the way that we're going to do that is we will take, first I'll just take the middle piece and I'll fold it over. We're going to put them right sides together just like we would on any quilt or anything else that we were doing. And I'm going to just take a couple of Wonder Clips just so that I don't have to worry about holding it tight or anything. And I'll just put them on here just so that it's holding it down. And then I have just a regular stick pin right here. And the things that I like to do is I'll just sort of put the pin in right at a corner, and then you look on the other side and you see where it's come through, and it came through right where it should, right? So that one is fine. We're doing a good job there. And then I'll put it through this side. You want to try to keep it, because there's a lot of bulk. So you don't want to go sideways. You have to, and I do usually do it whenever I'm down there, but it's not that big a deal. Okay. And it would be right on. It's just, it's moving around. But anyway, that's really good though. And so I'm just going to take this over to the sewing machine, and I'm just going to sew right there, which is our seam allowance. And when you are sewing it, because we are going to be attaching all of both sides of this piece to these pieces, you want to make sure that you do not go beyond the seam allowance line, like this line here, because this is the other seam allowance, and you're going to want it to be able to press back and forth. Okay, so you just want to again stitch from right there to right there. So let's go do that. Okay, so here we have our piece. And again, we're just going to be stitching from there to there. Okay, so I have joined these two pieces right here, and now we're going to add the third one. So again, we're just going to flip them right sides together, and I just sort of, this is one of the good things about doing these small pieces, is that you can just use your hands and feel, you know, that everything is good. So I'm just going to put some Wonder Clips on there again. Like I said, just to hold it, you know, steady, and I don't have to worry about it. And I'm going to take my pen, and let me just try to do it right here. I know that you can't see anything. Sorry about that. Got it through there, and there we go. That's pretty much, I mean, seriously, that's great. And to do this side, and that one's a little bit more off, but I'm just going to leave that one. I'm happy with that because this part is very straight. I can feel that nothing's really crooked. This is way important with like the bigger pieces, because if you have like really big, you know, like if you're making animals and that sort of thing, then this is the best way to tell, because some of your pieces will be not even dead on each other. You'll see if you want to come later in the summer, I do have my membership opening where a big part of everything I'm doing is going to be foundation paper piecing, and I will be teaching you how to do everything from very simple designs like this all the way up to, you know, like bats and other kinds of stuff. I'm hoping that I can like sort of teach myself to write my own patterns, because that would be great. I would love to do that, and I've been wanting to for so long. So anywho, let's go and sew this seam, and I'll be right back, and then we'll be adding those other pieces. We're almost done. I'm so excited. I can't wait till it looks like this. Okay, so here's my piece, and we are sewing that line right there. So let's see if I can get that under there and then worry about that clip. Well, no, now I can take it off. Now that I have it under there, I'm just so afraid everything's gonna move. Okay, so here we have our middle piece, which we now have connected together. And I just wanted to show you that he does say that we should be pressing open. And really the reason why we do this is mainly to reduce bulk whenever we are joining our pieces together. So now we are ready to add our, I don't know, what would you call this? A wing? And it's going to be the same thing. You're going to be taking it, and we're going to flip them right sides together. And the important thing that we're going to be concentrating on is making sure that these seams line up. Okay, so I'm going to flip them right sides together. And, oh, just one moment. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so what we're going to do is you can see where the seams are, and you can see that this one's lining up and then that one is a little off. So the first thing I'm going to try to do is I'm going to go over to the ironing board, and I'm going to try to just sort of press this out a little bit more, just a tiny bit, see if we can ease those. You know, I mean, honestly, I'm saying ease, because don't pull it, don't, you know, make it all skewed and all of that kind of stuff. But sometimes when you haven't worked with a piece for a little while, you see how it's starting to like, it's just starting to come up. So if you just go over and give it a quick press, sometimes that will help to lay it flat a little bit. So I'm going to go do that real quick. Okay, let's see now. All right, it's a little bit better. Now for me, I am going to get it as close as I can. And you can look at it this way. I know it looks real crazy from where you are, I'm sure, but I can sort of see where the seams are. And if you pull it back just a little bit, you'll see where they're coming in. And I can see that the way it's landing is that my middle piece is a little bit too far that way for the back piece or the wing, and this one and my middle piece is also a little bit that way for that seam with the wing. So I'm just gonna sort of, you know, put it in a middle-ish place, and I'll be happy with it because, you know, I'm just gonna have to be. It's pretty, I mean, it's really close though. It's just not perfect, okay? And I'm okay with that. Okay, let's see. And then I'm gonna sort of, and the only reason why I put these Wonder Clips on is because first, it will just keep it from moving and shifting whenever I'm heading over to the sewing machine. And it also, you know, like when you're doing long, when you're sewing along a longer side kind of thing like this, they just tend to sort of shift a little bit just by, you know, for whatever reason. And if you have a Wonder Clip on there, it just makes it easier to hold things where they need to be without you having to spend too much time, you know, going crazy about it. All right, I'll put one more, but this one's going to be coming out really quick. It's just so that I can walk over. Okay, so I'm ready to go and sew this, and I'm just going to sew it straight down the line, and let's go do it. Okay, so we're going to be sewing these together, and now in this situation, you're going to want to start right at the end and then sew all the way down to the other end, and we'll be cutting those little clippies off if we need to after the fact. So there's no worrying about where the seam allowance is and all that, because this seam allowance, it's not going to matter. This is our last sew, so we want to make sure we're going as far to the top and as far to the bottom as we can so that it makes one block. Okay, so I've sewed one of the wings down, and you can totally tell this is off, but that's okay. I'm fine with it. I think it's going to be better once I get the other side on. And also, he did say that we should be pressing open, but mine it won't go. So I've just sort of laid it down that way, and maybe once I get the papers out, it will allow me to do it some other way, but I'm really not sure because there's so much bulk right here. So anyway, we'll just see how it lays. Okay, so now we're going to attach the last piece, and we're going to fold it over right sides together, and again trying to see where that seam is. Sorry, I'm looking at it myself and not showing you. So what I did was I just peeled this back, and I look at where those pieces are coming together, and that looks good in that spot right there. So I'm just going to pin that part or Wonder Clip it. And then on this one, it looks like it might be just a tad bit off, but actually this side is a lot better than the other side. So I'm just going to go ahead and Wonder Clip that. And same thing. I'm just using my finger to hold them together where I want them. I'll do the same on the other side, and it feels nice. Okay, so now I'm going to take that over to the machine and sew that, and then we'll come back and see the final product. Okay, so it's pretty much all done. All I want to do is I'm going to cut off the little dog ear like things. I'm just going to line up my ruler to the very end and just trim that down. And right here. Oh, that one went a little wonky. All right, I'm just going to do them a little funky right now until I can, once I'm attaching it to something, all of that will get trimmed. And then I'll do this side. And this last one. Okay, and then once you have all the papers out, once we, get finished attaching it to however we're going to use it, and you take the papers out, it will lay flat. So it's just because there is really just so much bulk in this middle piece here. That's why it's not laying flat. So once we have all the papers out, everything will be fine, and it will lay flat just like Giuseppe's did right there. And so there you go. It's done. I mean, my personal opinion, and this is probably like my least favorite, and it has nothing to do with, difficulty or anything like that. It's just, I don't know. It's just something about it. I like all of them. Don't get me wrong. I like all of them. But this one is probably just my least favorite. And let me just pull all my other pieces out. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with mine. Do you guys know what you're going to do with yours? I don't even know if I have all of them right here. It looks like these are the ones that I have close by. And so I'm really not sure what I want to do with mine. I was thinking about like a wall hanging, but I think that probably if I'm going to do a wall hanging, I want to do another set with like something else. And I'm not sure what that something else would be. So then I'm also thinking about maybe mug rug or mug rugs. Obviously I would do, one for each. But I'm really not sure. I'm on the fence right now. What do you guys think? Like, what are you going to be making with yours? I would love to hear some suggestions. And, I mean, I have to admit that I will be keeping mine as simple as possible because I don't have a huge amount of time to spend on putting things together. And so I'm just going to keep it simple for this go round. And so any suggestions you have would be lovely. And I can't wait to see everything that you guys are going to put out because like I've been saying for weeks now, I am like so impressed with what everybody's doing. I love it. I just totally love it. And thank you so much for sharing your inspiration with all of us because I love it. I love seeing what other people do. It just helps me creatively to start thinking about what I would like to do in the future with patterns like this. So I really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in maybe a week or two. I'm not sure how long it's going to take me to figure it out. And then I will come back and show you what my final projects are.